Welcome to Two Wheels, the show that brings you the very best in motorcycling.
Well, there's a treat this week as I'll be showing what fun there is to be had on a disused airstrip with a brand new sports bike. And Fran will be getting to grips with tyres at Mallory Park while the head-to-head sees the two fastest production bikes in the world fighting it out for top slot.
Now this week on Two Wheels we're delving into the murky world of stunts, as you may have guessed already. Now when I say stunts, we're not talking about those Evel Knievel daredevil leaps of faith across hordes of buses, and nor are we talking about the kind of stuff you see in the movies. No, what we're talking about here is your everyday staples, those little riding tricks that can add so much more to your two-wheeled skill and enjoyment.
Some folk will tell you that these things are neither big nor clever, but I can tell you now, they're all wrong. Anyone who can pull stand-up wheelies through the gearbox is not only firing on all cylinders upstairs, but is also most likely a very proficient rider. Nope, sour grapes about pulling stunts on a motorcycle only tend to come from people who can't do it. Bikes, and especially sports bikes, are over the top, exciting, and ever so slightly dangerous, which is why we like them. And it's no different with stunts.
But let's get one thing straight before we go any further. Learning to do any of these things is a potentially hazardous activity. So the best way to go about it is to start small and build up gradually. You'll want some proper protective gear on as well. Try doing any of this lot in flip-flops and swimming trunks, and the only place you're likely to be going fast is casualty. You'll need to pick your location carefully too. Put simply, the public highway is not the place for any of this lot. Fair enough, the occasional spot a knee down on a deserted roundabout, that's one thing. But if you're going to start pulling wheelies through the middle of town and stoppies up to the traffic lights, you're not only putting other people in danger, but you might well lose your licence as well.
Right then, sermon over. Now we can get on with the serious business of being silly on a motorcycle. And I can tell you there is no better feeling than letting your hair down and doing all of the things on a bike you've always been told not to. And for those of you still struggling to justify such seemingly juvenile behaviour despite deep down knowing you've always wanted to give it a go, then bear in mind that learning these little tricks will help your riding skills no end and improve your safety on the road.
Don't believe me? Well, knee down teaches you how far over you can lean your bike, while wheelies require the very finest in throttle control. And as for stoppies, well, they will help your emergency stops no end. But we're going to have to leave it there for the time being, because now it's over to Fran, who's got something completely different.
Well, it's all very well and good sitting in your armchairs watching your favourite racer go round and round the track, but have you ever thought about such details as tyres? Well, I'm here at Mallory Park to talk to the guys in the know on my quest for two wheels knowledge. I'm here with Pat Walsh, who is the
sales manager for the motorcycle race at Dunlop Tyres.
Right, so what does your role involve then, Pat?
We look after the British Superbike Championship. This is one of the trailers here behind you that we bring. We normally bring 3.
Yeah.
What happens is, process basically,
Yeah.
Anthony here, what he's done is let the air out of the tyre.
Yeah.
And he's just breaking the rim now.
Right.
Breaking it down.
Yeah.
And the times will come up with these. Many times we'll do this. Then it goes onto the fitting machine.
Right.
Simon here now, he'll be stripping off the used tyre.
Right, okay. So how many fitters do you have then normally?
Well, normally there's one on every machine, and there's 2 guys that are breaking them down, and then there's another 3 guys that are on the balancing.
So that's fitting a new tyre then?
If
so
you like to come up this way.
Right.
After that process, then they're put onto the balancer.
Yeah.
Anthony then checks. He's looking now to see if the rim's not bent, to see if the tyre's round, which we expect it to be.
Yeah. And so this is all done by the eye?
It is, yeah. We trust our lads.
That's very trusting.
It is, yeah, more so than an electronic machine.
Really?
Static balancing, yeah, definitely.
That's
for
amazing.
motorcycle.
Right, moving on then. So where does it go after the balancing
After
then?
it's balanced, they go onto the table here, and that's when the teams collect the fitted units. That's the process complete. But of course, that's not where we keep the tyres. We can't have them outside here, so if you'd like to come up here.
Yeah, I'd love to come up there.
Like I say, this is only one of 3 trailers we'd normally have with us.
Yeah.
The tyres for the R6 Cup, they're behind you, they're the fronts and these are the rear tyres.
Right.
All the others in this vehicle at the moment, these are Superbike tyres.
Right.
These are the rears. Rears on that side again, and these are the fronts.
So how many tyres do you carry then with you?
About 2,000.
Good, in the whole of the 3 trucks?
The 3 trucks between them, yeah. This one holds the least because of the hospitality area.
Hospitality area?
Yeah, that's actually all the data that we collect over the weekend. Obviously, it's all got to be processed.
Right.
And if you'd like to come
I
up
think
this
we
way,
need a
I'll
look
show
in
you.
there, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Wow. So this is the hospitality suite then?
It is, yeah. This is where it all goes on at the weekend.
What goes on at the weekend?
Everything, all the sales transactions, all the, you know, whatever the riders need to know, what campaigns they're going to run in the race. Pretty much over the course of the weekend, we'll probably have 1,000 people that actually come up and visit this area.
Good grief.
Yeah.
So what do you need your computer for then here?
The computer, that's where we control all the stock from, and the sales transactions, that's where it's all done. And the guys that are good enough to come and pay us on a Sunday, that's recorded on there as well.
Oh right, that's fantastic.
Sure, yeah.
So absolutely anything basically that needs peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet, that's right, yeah.
Away from all the machines.
That's right, yeah.
That's fantastic, Pat. Well, thank you very much for my tour of the trailer. I've really enjoyed it.
You're more than welcome.
And I've also spotted a couple of R6 Cup riders outside, so I'm going to go and accost them. I'll see you later, Pat.
Thank you.
Well, I've managed to grab a couple of racers out here. In fact, I've got 3. I've got R6 Cup riders, Kieran Clark, Cal Crutchlow, and British Superbike rider, Glenn Richards. So guys, I need to know, I've talked to the guys at Dunlop, I need to know what you think of the tyres.
Well, I'm sure me and Kieran think the same on the tyres. We're both racing the Yamaha R6 Cup Series, which we use road replica tyres. They're very grippy, we get a lot of feel from them. They only take a couple of laps to warm up, scrub the tyres in. So yeah, I'm very happy with them. I'm sure Kieran is too.
How many different types of tyres do you have then when you arrive at a race?
We can only use one set of tyres all weekend, one compound all through the season, which makes it very fair for the individual rider.
Absolutely.
The road replica gives us a tremendous amount of grip compared to a lot of the other tyres available, which is really good.
Yeah, so that really makes it down to the individual rider then, doesn't it? Which is fantastic. So Glenn?
Well, tyres are everything in the Superbike class.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so many choices of tyres. We generally at most race meetings have around about 4 different compounds of rear tyre and probably 2 or 3 compounds of front tyre.
Yeah.
That's just for the dry. And then we have our wet weather tyres as well for the full wet. And we have a couple of compounds of them. And then we also sometimes use an intermediate, which is for drying conditions.
Yeah.
Very rarely we use those tyres, but sometimes we have to. But
So how do you assess them? You just go out on the track?
yeah, I mean, each track's different, so each track we go to requires a different tyre, and you know, it's obviously we know from experience. I've been to the tracks before, but we also generally just go out and do some laps in practice and see which tyre works the best.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your opinions on your tyres, lads. That's it for part 1. Join us in part 2 here at Mallory Park.
For our first piece of tomfoolery today, we're going to take a look at the humble knee down. Pioneered by the great Kenny Roberts Sr. in the late 1970s, this was the result of a new riding style that saw riders hanging off the inside of their bikes in, through and out of faster corners. The idea was, and still is, that by hanging off the inside of the bike, riders could keep their motorcycle more upright for a given corner speed. This would give you more grip and more safety, plus it meant that should things go wrong and you have a low side, then you're already on the floor, so you've got less far to fall. Also, if you've got the reflexes, you had a chance of saving any slides with your outstretched knee.
Now, though you and I may be lacking in the superhuman reflexes needed to save a sliding bike on our knees, the rest of the knee down theory applies just the same to us road riders as it does to the GP gods. So if you want to give it a go, the key is all in your body position. Just remember to check your practice areas free of any gravel, diesel and any of that other bad stuff that may have you off, and to ride a little first to warm your tyres up before starting to really lean the bike over.
Forget all that Mike Halewood knees in stuff. You've got to get with the program and start moving about. So on your way into your chosen corner, get right off the side of the bike. You're looking to get that inner cheek off the saddle onto the side there. And at the same time, make sure your toes are right on the edge of your foot peg and your knee is pushed out at right angles, headed towards the tarmac. It'll feel unnatural at first, but believe me, you need to hang off a lot further than you think until you get used to it. So when you think you're off as far as you can be, push it some more.
Keep your upper body loose and your eyes focused on where you're going. Whatever you do, don't look down at your knee. Do that and you're bound to crash. You want the bike in a highish gear too, pulling steadily and gently in the mid-range through the turn. This way there's no danger of any bumps making you jerk the throttle and bounce you and the bike offline or worse.
So now we're mid-corner at a nice smooth speed and hanging off for all we're worth. What next? Well, if things are going well, your knee will be happily scuffing the tarmac and you'll be grinning inside your helmet. If they're not going quite so well, you're not going to have your knee down at all. If you're in the first camp, congratulations. If you're in the second, don't worry. All it'll take is a bit more practice once you've got the body position and theory right. You'll be scuffing your sliders in no time. Well, that's quite enough of the knee down nonsense for part one, but join us again in part two when we're going to be back with stoppies and wheelies. And Fran will be doing something altogether completely different. We'll also have the results of our head-to-head. See you in a mo. Welcome back to Two Wheels, where this week we're doing stunts here at Bruntingthorpe. But before we get onto that, it's time for our head-to-head.
Performance and handling are what these two bikes are all about, especially performance. The GSXR 1300, or Hayabusa as it's affectionately known, went straight to the top of its class at its debut a few years ago. That mind-blowing 4-cylinder power plant screams power and performance, and a hell of a lot of torque. But even with all that oomph, it's still smooth and easy to ride, but deceptively fast. So keep an eye on your speedo with this cheeky little number. The ZX12R is also a speed demon, although it's a little more top-endy than the Hayabusa in its power delivery. However, where it picks it up is in the chassis. The revised suspension and geometry on this bike means it's well planted and turns a lot quicker than the Hayabusa does. The fact that Kawasaki also have their own aircraft division has helped this bike, because that front end has been redesigned using full-on wind tunnel aerodynamic testing to improve the aerodynamics. However, the Hayabusa still boasts a slipperier shape. Each to their own on the styling front. The Hayabusa has taken some serious abuse for its unusual looks, shall we say. You're either going to love it or loathe it, but it is purposeful and very smooth with curvy lines that could be considered a little soft, but they are very good at punching through the air. Kawasaki, on the other hand, have gone for a far more normal sports bike look, just a bit bigger all over to get that huge motor in. The front end has been sharpened up, the air duct has become more integrated, and the bike looks fast even at a standstill. The Hayabusa is a well-finished, solid piece of kit, apart from the tacky dash that is, which is starting to look a bit 1980s Ford Capri these days. Otherwise, no problems at all. One thing to look out for though is rear tyre munching, because all that power does not mean big life out of a tyre. You're looking at about 3,000 miles out of a rear before you're going to have to replace them. The Kawasaki build quality is pretty spot on as well, and with plenty of TLC will survive whatever you and the British weather can throw at it. It's a tough decision. Both bikes perform well, both will take you to dizzying speeds in no time at all, and both handle well for their weight and size. Looks may be the decision maker here, or brand loyalty. But if it was to come down to my decision, I would have to take the new ZX12. All that punch and the handling and braking to go with it. The Hayabusa, however, has to hold the outright speed card, whichever way you look at it. Well, will you look at that result? It's a straight split down the middle with 50-50 on either side. The Hayabusa's got the power, but people may be put off by the looks. The Kawasaki looks the business, but those last 2 miles an hour taking it to a genuine 200 just aren't quite there. You're going to have to make the call yourselves.
And now it's time for some one-wheeled action, and we're going to start with our good old friend, the rolling stoppie. Now, just as with knee-down antics, you're going to want to make sure that your practice surface is nice and clean and dry before you start messing around. And at the same time, you're going to want to also make sure you've got plenty of heat in your front tyre and brakes. Now, you can do this by riding around a little bit before you start practicing your stoppies, and also just dragging that front brake on and off slightly. Hold it on, pull it on a bit, off. This will just get some heat into the system nice and quickly.
Now we're ready for action, and all you need to do is brake hard. I know this sounds oversimplified, but that really is all there is to it. Approach your chosen spot at about 50 miles an hour, get the brakes on, start to let those forks compress, and then wind on the pressure. Look ahead and not at the floor, and concentrate on feeling for that grip from the front wheel.
From here, what you're aiming for is to brake later and harder. Exactly how late or how hard is only going to come to you through practicing and getting a feel for the way your bike behaves when you're hard on the anchors. Sadly, there are no magic shortcuts or secret formulas that will see you suddenly rolling mile-long stoppies overnight. But what you're aiming to do is to get the brakes on a bit, get that front wheel biting the tarmac, then with a sudden nip of the lever, get the back end up in the air, let it off slightly, and roll the thing along to a gentle and dignified halt.
But now, back over to Fran, who's getting to grips at the racetrack.
Now, I've already interrogated Pat and had a tour of the trailer. I've spoken to 3 racers, and now I need to find 2 technicians. Anybody in there want to talk to me? Yeah. Right, we've got Anthony, who is senior fitter, and Simon, who is tyre technician. So Anthony, what exactly do you do?
Load the trucks Wednesdays, Tuesday, Wednesdays, drive there, arrive on a Thursday, set 3 trucks up all morning, all machinery. Have 13 fitters, including myself. Yeah. And then Simon will give out all the allocations to what tyres people want. Turn up at the truck and I'll get their tyres out.
Right, sounds like an easy, non-complicated job. Simon, what exactly do you do?
Well, I work with the teams, getting rider feedback on the product, the performance of the product, and deciding what tyres to use for race day.
Right, and how do you go about assessing that then?
Well, we have a look at race reports from previous years to the tracks that we go to, look back on those, get similar constructions and compounds, take the product, and get the riders to try them for us.
Yeah, I mean, presumably you've worked with tyres that long. How long have you both been doing this?
14 years, mate.
8 years, mate.
Yeah, so you know tyres well enough to know roughly which variations are going to work. So what do you do then when you've decided on that?
We decide on what tyre we're going to use and we do a race run on it, you know, to get times and look at the performance and the actual appearance of the tyre. When they finish a race run, then use it for race day if they're happy with it.
Right, come back to you, Anthony, and you start fitting it.
Yeah, everything's fitted up then.
Do you actually work on this? Do you actually do the fitting yourself then? You get your hands dirty?
Yeah, I do it from fitting, breaking them down to balancing, as you've seen earlier. Yeah. Done all that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's a mine of information. Thank you very much, guys. And I cannot believe it. My knowledge is just unstoppable now.
See you later, friend.
See you, Anthony. Well, the guys have got to rush off now to Brands Hatch. And that's it for me as well. I've also got to go home. See you next time on 2 Wheels.
So now we come to the Elvis of stunts, the wheelie. Strangely addictive and very, very cool to look at, as you'll see. See, it doesn't matter what you're on, you're only going to look like the daddy.
There are 2 methods of getting the front wheel up, and that's either by grabbing a fistful of throttle or alternatively by using a spot of clutch finesse to help matters along. And it's the clutch method we'll be looking at today. The throttle method may be easier to learn, but the clutch method will stand you in far better stead for progressing your wheelies once you've got beyond basic technique.
There are a couple of things you're going to want to get set straight first, however, and these are to keep 2 fingers, your inside 2 fingers, on the clutch lever only. Leave the other 2 on the bar. That'll help you keep the bike travelling in a straight line once the front wheel's in the air. The other thing to do is to always make sure your right foot is covering the back brake lever. Now, if you're building up things gently, it's very unlikely you're going to loop your bike. But if things do get a little bit sky high, then it's good to be in the habit of keeping your foot over the brake, because a dab of that will bring you back down again.
Now we're ready to rumble. Trundle along in first gear at about 15 to 20 miles an hour, and as you start to accelerate as if you were pulling away briskly, pull the clutch in for a sudden extra few thousand revs and bang it back out again. With a little practice, just like Stoppies, there's no secret formula, you just have to get a feel for what works. This extra dose of power will ultimately start to lift the front wheel off the tarmac.
Once you've got that front wheel lifting even just a fraction, you're well on your way. All that's needed from here is time, patience and practice, and before long you'll be running it right the way through first gear on the back wheel. After this, you're going to want to know how to change gear while you're up there so that you can prolong your pleasure.
Well, once you've got the bike up and settled in first gear, snick it straight into second before the revs get too high. Change up with the needle in the red and you run a serious risk of flipping your bike. You're far better off doing this in the mid-range. Don't use the clutch, just back off the throttle ever so slightly and lift that gear lever. You'll find to start with that the front will probably come straight back down again as soon as you hit second, but in time you'll get the hang of it, and time is the key here. From there, the sky's the limit.
So there you have it. There's nothing here that a half-trained chimpanzee couldn't learn given the time, inclination and a little bit of space. Fair enough, it might cost you a little bit in terms of tyres, brake pads, head bearings, but if you're into it, it will be well worth it. And you'll discover a whole new dimension to your riding that you never even knew existed. Oh, I nearly forgot. We haven't covered the humble burnout. They're dead simple. Ignition on, start the motor, into gear, loads of brake.